Matthew chapter 7. Now this is a favorite verse of a lot of people, including Lordshippers. And they kind of quote it glibly. They normally don't know the context. And they clearly normally don't understand the verse. You will know them by their fruits. And I'm a fruit inspector, and I'm looking at your life, and therefore I'll know in essence whether you're saved or not by how you live your life. You will know them by their fruits. Now, again, the context is the Sermon on the Mount spoken by Jesus Christ. That's Matthew 5 through 7. In some cases, he's speaking to believers. In other cases, he's addressing unbelievers. There's a mixed group there. He makes it clear in Matthew 5, verse 20, that except your righteousness exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. So he's making that very clear, and I believe that's imputed righteousness. There are many transdispensational principles in the Sermon on the Mount about godly moral living and conduct. But when it comes to the phrase, you will know them by their fruits, let's look at the content. And let's go back to verse 13. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are, please note this, many who go in by it, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life. And there are few who find it. So we've got the many and the few. Now he says in verse 15, beware of false prophets. Did you know that's the context of you'll know them by their fruits? It's talking about false prophets. What about these false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing? So what do they look like? Sheep. But inwardly, not externally, inwardly, they are ravenous wolves. So do you think you're going to, from their lifestyle and by observing them externally, you would know they're a false prophet? Not necessarily. Now, I do know that some of the prosperity guys who teach, they're false prophets, no question, by their teaching, as well as their indulgent lifestyles reflect something seriously wrong. But keep in mind, what makes a false prophet a false prophet? Is it his living or is it his teaching? Well, obviously his teaching. You will know them, false prophets, by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears a good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, here it is, by your fruits you will know them. Second time he mentions. Now, it's interesting to note, and I will support this in a minute, that fruit can be used in reference to the words that people say. If you go to Matthew 12 for a moment, and the blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, which was done by unsaved religious leaders in Jerusalem, who claimed that Jesus was a demon-possessed miracle worker, but not the Messiah. We read in verse 33 these words. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for a tree is known by its fruit. There it is again. Well, what do you mean? Brood of vipers? How can you, being evil, speak good things? See the word speak? That's the fruit he's talking about. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's the fruit. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give an account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Now that's interesting. So the fruit here, back in Matthew 7, I believe, is the fruit of the false teaching of these people. It's not talking about primarily how they live. They might live pretty moral lives, but they're a false prophet because they prophesy falsely. The fruit comes from their lips. They'll go, as you look back in Matthew 7, notice what comes out of the lips starting in verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father which is in heaven. And by the way, the will of the Father in heaven is to believe on the Son. Many will say to me in that day. You see that word many before? That's one thing I really like about drawing on this. Notice the connector. Many go by way of the broad way that leads to destruction. Verse 22, many will say, see the word will say, the fruit of their lips? To me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. I never had a relationship with you. You were never saved. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So notice he's clearly referring to the fruit of one's lips relative to a false prophet who, on the day of judgment, relies upon their works. Have we not prophesied? Have we not cast out demons? Have we not done many? Have we done righteous things? Therefore, we should be let in. And he says, but I never knew you. You never put your faith in me alone. And therefore, you were never saved. You remained on the broad way that led to destruction. And so we've seen the context, we've seen the content addressed to unsaved false prophets, not believers. We've compared Matthew 12:37 through, I think it was 33 through 38. And here's what we conclude. The fruits of these unsaved false prophets are the fruit of their doctrine, not their lives, as they look like sheep, but are actually wolves. Okay, let me pause and ask for questions before we go over one last passage. Well, there's a classic case of taking a verse out of context, isn't it? And making it mean what you want it to mean. Now, I'm not suggesting that fruit is never in reference to someone's conduct, works, or lifestyle. I think it is. But not in this passage and not in that way. That's a swing and a miss big time.